Hello. I'm KallaTheYapper, and I'm back with another video. Today, I want to talk about why niche teams aren't inherently a bad thing, nor are characters who are designed for said niche teams. I'll be giving my reasons for why I hold this position, and of course, I'll be giving examples of good and bad forms of niche team building. Here are the points of discussion. Why do niche teams exist in the first place? Why do players hate niche characters and, by extension, niche teams? Can niche teams/characters only be a bad thing for a team building game? My bad. Examples of good and bad implementations of niche characters and teams. Conclusion plus extras. Now, let's begin. The simple answer to my first question is that it gets players out of their comfort zone, making them have to play a team that they usually wouldn't. Also, it's done to diversify the meta of a game to keep it from being stale and to bring focus to teams and characters people have left on the bench for long periods of time. Now, on to the next question. The reason for why players don't like niche characters/teams is because they see that playing a restrictive team forces them to play a team they usually wouldn't or don't have any interest in playing in the first place. Since the character that is designed to work best in a niche team setup, players also have the mindset that if they aren't using them in their best team setup, then said character is basically useless, or that they see it as a lack of effort from the devs to make new interesting gameplay. Another point of contention that I've heard is that players don't want to play a character the way the devs want them to, and that they want to use any and every character. However, they want without restriction. I disagree with this outlook on niche team building, and I'll get into that later. Now, on to the next point. The answer to this question is obviously no, but this doesn't stop people in believing so. So take a look at Skirk for a prime example. The amount of doom posting I saw related to her being made to excel using a reaction that has fallen off or fallen out of favor for years since Inazuma, purely because she's a freeze reaction DPS, which is really dumb. The only valid complaint about Skirk is that her teammates are primarily 5-star units and that there isn't a 4-star counterpart to any of them. Now, back on topic. Niche characters and teams can shake up the current meta of a game and even bring old characters out of the gutter. For example, Kuki Shinobu. When she came out, people immediately dismissed her character entirely because her stats were based on elemental mastery. There wasn't any character prior to her that used this stat, and people didn't see any value in her. Only for Dendro to come out and show off her value via Dendro reactions like Hyper Bloom, Aggravate, and Bloom. How about Nilu? When she came out, people complained that she needed to have Dendro units, but there was a small amount of said Dendro units at the time. But as we all know, more Dendro units that played a support role came out during version 3 and filled her team slots. Do I need to mention Chevreuse or Mizuki? Now, I'm going to talk about how niche is handled in Wuwa and Genshin respectively, so that I can show you both the good and bad forms of niche team building. Let's begin. I'm pretty sure we all know about the negative status effects in Wuwa at this point. For those who don't know, Wua's devs have implemented these elemental status effects as a way to give their elemental system more depth for the playable characters, since only enemy types across the game had access to it. The only purpose that Wua's element system had for the playable characters was solely elemental damage and nothing else. Now, with the implementations of these negative status effects, For the playable characters, it works as another form of elemental damage via debuffing the enemy and granting said debuff stacks to a playable character, or a character applying said debuff stacks to another character or enemy type. Now that you are caught up, I'll start with an example of bad niche team building and move on from there. Anyone who already sees where this is going knows that Zanny needs a Spectral Frazzle team in order to deal out her intended damage. This isn't really a bad thing until you take into consideration that said negative status effects are only placed on certain characters of an element type and not all characters from the same element type. Case in point, Spectral Frazzle. It can only be applied by two characters, those being Phoebe, a limited 5-star character, and Spectral Rover, a free unit. However, Phoebe is the superior option between the two because she applies more Spectral Frazzle, which, mind you, Zanny needs to unleash her full power of her burst. Or ultimate, whatever you want to call it. Because, again, she applies it better than Spectral Rover does. So, because of this, Zanny, as of right now, can only work with two characters who are of the Spectral element that have the ability to apply Spectral Frazzle, unlike the other Spectral units that came prior to Zanny and Phoebe. This is a prime example of bad niche team building because Zanny needs her premium support to unleash her full power. On top of that, the devs of Wuwa made the deliberate decision to apply their negative status effects system to now include playable characters, while in the same breath only giving certain characters who just so happen to be 5 stars the ability to apply the negative status effects. Basically, they've gone down the route of monetizing the niche teams that are now using the negative status effects in a very bad way. Yes, KallaTheYapper can apply arrow erosion on her own, which is a good thing. However, she still needs her premium support, Shakona, I forgot how to pronounce her name, who is a 5-star character because she deals more damage based off of, I'm pretty sure it's her HP and the number of arrow erosion stacks being applied to the enemy. Hopefully I'm correct on that. If I'm not, y'all can correct me in the comment section. But you get the point I'm making, right? What Wuwa's devs have done in this regard is an overall negative effect to the game and to the players, both new and old. When I started playing back in January, I thought that the negative status effects would be something every character of their specific element type will have said effects added to their kits, but I was told immediately by Tenshi, a member of the channel and viewer, that he said that the negative status effects weren't applied the way that I thought they were. Now, both Spectral Frazzle and Arrow Erosion teams are the strongest teams in the game right now, as I predicted so long ago in one of my Renacita streams. Let's go to the next example. As we all know, Genshin has released multiple characters that are designed for niche gameplay, or that they've released characters who can be put together to form a niche team over the years. Here are some examples. Cloud Retainer for plunge teams, Nilu for bloom teams, Navia for crystallized teams, Severush for overload teams, Kanich and Emily for burning teams, Mizuki for swirl teams, and many more. As you can see, all these characters I've listed are made for the many different aspects of Genshin's base combat and element reaction system. Yes, some of them have been left behind over the years, but we are starting to see a trend of these niches coming back into play. Case in point, Escoffier for freeze teams. Now, with the release of Escoffier, freeze teams have become meta once again, bringing out mainly Cryo rather than Hydro DPS characters out of the gutter, since her elemental skill can reduce an enemy's Cryo and Hydro resistance by 55% for 12 seconds. Additionally, with the release of Skirk, a freeze DPS, many have given their opinions on her. However, Skirk is one of the many examples in Genshin as a form of good niche team building. For starters, Skirk needs any and all cryo or hydro units in order to increase her normal attack and elemental burst damage output. Here's one of her talents: Return to Oblivion. Also, there have been many cryo and hydro units released throughout the 4 to 5 years that Genshin has been active, so you won't be lacking in the element type aspect that is needed for Skirk's free team. To give you an accurate picture, there are 17 cryo units and 14 hydro units in the game currently. Another thing to note is that the freeze reaction is not something that is locked behind a small minority of either cryo or hydro units being able to perform, but instead it is accessible to all of them since it's a part of the base elemental reaction system that has been here for years now. Now, there are only two reasons people have an issue with Escoffier more than Skirk. Is because one, the high elemental resistance reduction she provides, and two, the fact that there isn't any 4-star equivalent to her. Since we all know that Escoffier is a 5-star and a premium team member of Skirk's freeze team. Dahlia could have been that 4-star version of Escoffier, but he's made to increase Skirk or any cryo or hydro character's attack speed via his elemental burst, causing a freeze reaction. I know it doesn't say it's for cryo and hydro units specifically in his talent descriptions, but it's pretty obvious what elements benefit from his talent, and also because there's an image of cryo and hydro slashed together on his skill description. Anyway, to continue, for the sake of the comparison argument, you can clearly see which form of niche team building is objectively better. One system only allows certain units access to an already existing mechanic of its element system, while the other allows all characters to use a mechanic that's already been a part of its element system since the start. Now for my final thoughts and more. I disagree with the idea that niche teams are objectively a bad thing. However, it can become a bad thing when what a character needs for said niche team is locked behind another unit that's a limited character or is implemented into the base design of the game and is only given to certain characters and not all of them. I do believe that making niche teams and characters can make the game's current meta feel fresh when you are led to use something that has been left in the closet for so long, giving you the opportunity to experience the full aspect of a game's meta instead of just tasting 70% of it that players usually only bother experiencing. That's why, if WoW's devs continue down this path of only allowing accessibility of the negative side effects to certain 5-star units, and not every character, it will lead to power creep and the crippling of a damage dealer's power based on whether or not said character has access to negative status effects in their kit, or if they need a character who can apply said negative status effects that they themselves can't, like in the case of Zanny. We are already seeing in real time as these negative status effects DPS characters are displaying crazy amounts of damage output in comparison to other DPSs. We should be experiencing all of it and not just a portion of it, at least when it comes to the elemental aspect of WoW's niche team building. I've seen players and WoW CCs claim that it's a lack of 4-star characters. It's a lack of 4-star character issue for why there aren't as many options outside of the premium options that can apply these negative status effects. However, my bad, they are wrong. It's not because of a lack of 4 stars that have the ability to apply these negative status effects. It's simply a deliberate bad game design issue that the WoW devs have purposely made in order to force you to spend money to pull for a character that has an ability that every character should have had added to their kits when they announced that these negative status effects were going to be added to the element system for the playable characters. Now, For some interesting information that some of you may or may not already know, in version 5.8 of Genshin Impact, there will be a character from Nodcry that will be released, and she is an electro-charge reaction support character that also has a new mechanic that will buff the electro-charge reaction as well via a continuous attacking thundercloud. This is what I meant earlier about Genshin bringing out niche teams out of the gutter. On top of that, they already released a 4-star character that is designed for electro-charged teams, aka Auroron, plus his homeboy, Aoife, increases the damage dealt by Swirl and electro-charged damage by all party members. I also heard that Nuvalet's passive talent description will be or has already been changed to accommodate for this electro-charge reaction archetype that's coming. I don't know if the electro-charge was already stated in his passive talent beforehand or not. Y'all can tell me in the comment section. Another thing I want to add is that if Zenless were to release a character whose main source of damage comes from inflicting an elemental anomaly on an enemy, there wouldn't be an issue since every character in the game can inflict an elemental anomaly that is tied to their element type that they are. Case in point, all physical characters can inflict assault. There's one more thing I want to say because I know someone is going to say it. The 2 new bosses that have been added to Genshin over the last 1 or 2 months do not require you to have Skirk or Scofier to beat them effectively. Because all the boss needs is you to bring any and all cryo and hydro units to perform the freeze reaction. That's all. These bosses are not character check bosses, as some have or might claim them to be. Now, tell me whether or not you agree with my opinion. If you think I'm being biased towards one game over another in this regard, prove it. Like and subscribe, join the Discord if you want to, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace. I'm so glad I got this video done in time. Let's go. Okay, bye.